A head coach walked to the podium after a 55-point blowout win and told the room, on camera, that the previous approach was a mistake. Not through a spokesperson, not buried in a press release 3 days later. Live, in front of microphones, on the record. And what makes that moment hit differently than any other coaching admission you've seen this year is what that admission was actually about. Because it wasn't about a play call or a late-game substitution or a tactical adjustment in the fourth quarter. It was about Caitlin Clark. And the decision, repeated over and over again throughout this tournament, to treat the most dominant individual performer in FIBA, qualifying history like she needed to wait her turn. That moment has been building since the first game of this tournament. And if you've felt like you were watching something deeply wrong unfold on that court, something that didn't add up, something where the box score was telling one story and the rotation was telling a completely different one, you weren't imagining it. The numbers were always there. The evidence was always there. And now, finally, the coach standing at that podium confirmed it. Let's get into all of it, because this story goes deeper than one coaching change. If this breakdown is giving you the analysis you've been looking for, hit the like button right now. It's the fastest way to make sure more people find the real story instead of the spin. Now, let's connect some dots. The story starts in Caitlin Clark's very first game for the United States senior national team. She had never played at this level before, never worn that jersey in official FIBA competition, and in that debut performance against Senegal, she broke 5 world records, 5, in a single game. That is not a hot shooting night. That is not a run of good luck or a favorable matchup. 5 world records in one game represents a historically dominant individual performance in international basketball, the kind of thing that, in a normal coaching environment, would immediately tell you something about how to use that player going forward. And yet, what happened next was the part that made fans stop and look at each other. Kara Lawson, the Team USA head coach at the time, started making rotation decisions that moved Clark off the ball, benched her during key stretches, shuffled lineups in ways that didn't optimize around the player who had just set 5 records. The stated reason, publicly, at the podium, when a reporter finally pressed Lawson directly about Clark's role, was not about Clark's performance. It was not about Clark's conditioning. It was about making sure everyone on the roster got their time to shine. Lawson said, essentially, that this is a team full of stars. Every player starts for their WNBA team, and everyone deserves a role. That sounds reasonable until you hold it up against the reality of what had just happened in that first game. You don't look at 5 world records and respond by talking about equal opportunity minutes. You don't respond to that by saying no one player is the number one option. That's not coaching. That's something else entirely. What makes this situation particularly revealing is who else was in that coaching room alongside Lawson. Stephanie White, the head coach of the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark's own team, was serving as a Team USA assistant during this tournament. And Stephanie White has a very well-documented philosophy when it comes to Clark. The approach White has run in Indiana involves keeping Clark off the ball more than her natural game dictates, limiting how often she's actually operating as the engine of the offense, slowing down the pace and tempo that Clark generates naturally when you let her run. So you had 2 coaches on the same staff, both operating from the same general philosophy. The idea that Clark is more manageable, more controllable, better for team chemistry when she's doing less. And that philosophy ran directly into what the tournament was showing on the scoreboard every night. Because when Clark wasn't running the offense, the numbers told the story in real time. The pace dropped. Team USA shifted into half-court sets that didn't match what anyone on that roster was actually built to run. The assist numbers dried up. The ball movement slowed to a crawl. The team went from looking explosive and hard to guard to looking flat and mechanical. None of that is a coincidence. When you remove the player leading the entire tournament in assists from her natural role as the primary ball handler and playmaker, the offense reflects that decision immediately. Clark herself never said a word about any of it publicly. No cryptic posts, no sideways comments, no shade thrown toward the coaching staff. She sat on that bench when she was asked to, played her minutes when she got them, and let the box score speak, and it absolutely spoke. Then, Kara Lawson was gone. The details around her departure haven't been officially explained in full, but what matters for the story playing out on the court is the result. Nate Tibbetts took over as interim head coach, and his very first decision was to start Caitlin Clark. Not to ease her back in, not to give her a modified role with a slow ramp-up. He looked at his roster and immediately put his best playmaker in the position she was built for, right from the opening tip. Team USA beat New Zealand 101-46, a 55-point win, and Clark led the team in both efficiency and assists. And then Tibbetts walked to the podium and said the previous approach was a mistake, not as a political statement, not to throw anyone under the bus, just as a factual description of what the data was showing and what he had decided to correct. That press conference moment became its own story because it's genuinely rare, a coach sitting in front of cameras and saying, plainly, that what happened before wasn't right and that this team has a clear best option who should have been used as such all along. Fans who had been watching this tournament had been saying exactly that for weeks. The comment sections, the social media threads, the radio calls, all of it had been pointing at the same pattern. Records broken. Player benched, offense flowing, player moved off ball, best playmaker on the floor treated like a problem to manage rather than an asset to maximize. And for weeks, the response from the coaching staff was deflection, pivoting to talking points about team unity and roster depth. Now there's a coach saying what the evidence always said. What's worth understanding about this moment beyond the surface-level vindication is what it reveals about a broader tension inside the structure of women's basketball right now. Caitlin Clark represents something that a certain coaching philosophy in this league has consistently been uncomfortable with, not because of her talent, nobody disputes that, but because of what her talent demands. When you build around Clark, the offense becomes about pace, playmaking, and creating space for shooters off her reads. That's a system where Clark is the engine. And for coaches who have spent careers building more balanced, committee-based offensive structures, putting one player at the center of everything feels like a philosophical concession. That tension was visible in how Lawson ran her rotations. It was visible in how White operates in Indiana. And it is now fully visible in the contrast between what Team USA looked like before this coaching change and what it looks like after. Because the numbers are not subtle. They are not open to interpretation. Drop a comment below right now. Should Nate Tibbetts be the permanent head coach of Team USA going forward? Or does Kara Lawson come back and undo everything that just happened? Because the World Cup is coming, and this decision matters more than people are giving it credit for. Tell us exactly where you stand. Let's talk about what Clark's actual numbers look like under Tibbetts, because this is where the argument becomes impossible to counter. Clark leads Team USA in assists. She leads Team USA in efficiency. She leads Team USA in free throws drawn, which means she is getting into the paint and drawing contact, something you simply cannot do if you are hiding on the perimeter or playing off the ball in a passive role. Those free throw numbers are a technical confirmation that she is attacking, creating pressure at the rim, and forcing defenses to make decisions they don't want to make. But the single most revealing statistic in this entire tournament is the plus-minus number. Clark does not just lead Team USA in plus-minus, she leads every single player on every single roster across every country competing in the entire FIBA 2026 qualifying tournament. The full field, every team, every player. When Caitlin Clark is on the floor, Team USA is outscoring opponents by a wider margin than any other player is producing for their team in the whole competition. That is the most impactful player in the entire field, and it is not a close race. And she is doing all of this after 8 months off the court, recovering from a serious injury. She showed up to this tournament still fighting through the flu. She said herself she was trying to figure out where her body was at across 5 games in 7 days. And still, by every measurable standard, she is the most dominant force in this qualifying event. the most impactful player in a tournament full of professional players from multiple countries, and she is doing it while not at full health. Before we keep going, if this kind of analysis is the reason you keep coming back to this channel, consider joining as a member. Your support is what makes it possible to keep digging into the stories nobody else is covering, and it goes a long way toward keeping us here doing exactly this. Now, there is a pairing developing on this Team USA roster that deserves its own extended conversation, because it is the best news story coming out of this tournament that has nothing to do with the coaching drama. Clark and Paige Bueckers are building genuine on-court chemistry, and the New Zealand game was the clearest look at what that combination actually produces. When Tibbetts restructured the rotation and gave both of them extended floor time together, the offense transformed. Not incrementally, not slightly, noticeably, visibly, undeniably better. Clark running the show in transition, reading defenses before they set, making the right pass at the right moment. Bueckers cutting hard, finding space, finishing at the rim without either player stepping on the other's rhythm. The dynamic works because they are not asking each other to do the same thing. Clark runs the engine, Bueckers plays off it, and that combination creates a two-headed problem that defenses genuinely cannot solve with a single adjustment. In the Italy game, Clark put up 12 points and 5 assists in roughly 22 minutes, and most of that production came directly from her ability to drive into the lane, collapse the defense, and kick it out to Bueckers or Monique Billings for clean open looks. That is not a run-and-gun offense out of control. That is organized offensive basketball, where every decision Clark makes creates a better shot for somebody else on the floor. Teams have to respect her pull-up jumper, her floater, her ability to finish through contact. So when she passes out of those situations, those are genuine open shots, not desperation bailouts. Compare that to what the offense looked like under the previous setup. Clark off the ball, the pace reduced to half-court grind, sets that didn't match the natural tendencies of anyone on the roster. The talent was still there. The roster did not get worse. But the system was actively getting in the way of the talent, asking both Clark and Bueckers to do less than what they are capable of at the same time, which is exactly how you waste two of the most dynamic guards in the game. If you want to share this breakdown with someone who needs to hear this, now is the perfect time to send it their way. This is the analysis that the mainstream coverage keeps glossing over, and the more people watching, the louder this community gets. There's also an honest conversation happening around Angel Reese's role in this tournament under Tibbetts, and it is worth addressing directly rather than dancing around it. Tibbetts pulled back her minutes in the New Zealand game, and the statistical reality is that the team ran cleaner because of it. There have been real breakdowns when Reese and Clark share the floor, outlet passes that do not connect, decisions in the lane that do not align with what Clark is reading in real time, a disruption in flow that is visible even to casual observers. Tibbetts is handling this the way a practical coach handles it, which is to simply stop putting two players in situations where the combination keeps producing breakdowns. That is not a commentary on Reese's talent as an individual player. It is a recognition that not every combination works, and the job of a head coach is to put the best combinations on the floor, not the most politically convenient ones. What makes this entire situation meaningful beyond this specific tournament is the timing. Clark is coming out of these games healthy, sharp, and playing the best international basketball of her career. She went through 8 months of injury recovery, showed up here dealing with illness, and still became the most statistically dominant player in the field. That is the version of Caitlin Clark that is walking into the 2026 WNBA season. That is the player that Indiana Fever fans are getting back. And the Fever should be extraordinarily excited about that, because what this tournament has demonstrated is that a fully unleashed Caitlin Clark, one allowed to run the offense the way Tibbetts is running it now, is a categorically different player than the managed Isam, off-ball, pace-restricted version that a certain coaching philosophy has insisted on deploying. The question that this tournament has raised, and that the 2026 season will start to answer, is whether that lesson travels back to Indianapolis with her. Because the story of this tournament is not just about Kara Lawson's departure, it is not just about Tibbetts stepping up. The deeper story is about a coaching philosophy that spent weeks trying to put limits on the most dominant player in the entire FIBA qualifying field. And the moment those limits were removed, the numbers immediately showed what was always true. Clark broke 5 world records, received a rotation that treated those records like a logistical inconvenience, watched coaching decisions prioritize balance over excellence, and then, without a single public complaint, simply went out there sick and outperformed every player in the entire tournament from top to bottom. The coaching staff did not vindicate her. The scoreboard did. Tibbetts just had the honesty to say it out loud. If the World Cup is coming, and these are the decisions being made right now about who runs this offense and who stands at that podium afterward, what happens next matters enormously. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you are here the moment we cover the next development, because this situation is not finished and the next chapter is already in motion. The full FIBA qualifying story and its implications for the 2026 WNBA season is exactly where this channel is going next. And you do not want to be the last person in the room when that story breaks.